While visiting a ghost town of America's Old West, I was told that it was haunted by a traveling snake oil salesman that had brought about its ruin. And I pondered this as I read the yellowed label of a dusty old bottle that stated that it once held a miracle elixir that had mysterious healing properties. Immediate relief was guaranteed to those who suffered from any numerous ailments, including frostbite, headaches, sore throats, and coughs. I was informed that it was sold by one of those opportunistic traveling con men. In their sales pitches, sometimes outrageous claims of medicinal successes were attributed to the exotic ingredients of their product. The actual ingredients sometimes included mineral oil and turpentine. With enthusiasm, snake oil peddlers would often use deceptive sale techniques, including theatrical productions and confidence tricks. Their conversation would be pure trumpery. Their claims were just a lot of malarkey. The unsuspecting public would be exploited by these seedy profiteers who sold them fake cures. Before the scam was fully discovered, these types of salesmen often skipped town. Journalists reported about their fraud, and people got fed up with the petty con men. It led to the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 and the creation of the Food and Drug Administration. A ghost appeared to me and told me the following story. I was told that early one morning in late October of 1880, a snake oil peddler came to town. On the side of his red-painted wooden medicine wagon was painted in ornate gold and bold letters, Dalton Drumps, Miraculous Elixir, a quick, sure cure. He stopped in an open area downtown. In the back of the wagon there was a small railed platform on which to stand. The peddler was a shifty-eyed man with straw-colored hair. He wore a white shirt, a red silk four-in-hand puff necktie, and a black topcoat. He addressed the crowd. A curious crowd quickly gathered around the wagon. Dalton Drump held up a bottle. He spoke loudly and clearly so everyone could hear. He made a lot of eye contact with individuals in the crowd. He had a casual way of speaking that was informal and appealed to the common people. He held the crowd in a spellbinding grip. He told the crowd to be glad and grateful. He said that he was astonished that the people in town had not heard of the sensational concoction he had in his bottle. The pitchman made many claims. His product was new, it was sweeping the nation. His snake oil was changing people's lives for the better by curing all known maladies. It was guaranteed to cure what ails you. Dalton Drump said that he would be willing to sell the medicine. He stated that those who purchased implicitly released him from any liability for any adverse side effects. They formed a very long line. Each person eagerly made a purchase. The grifter handed out the bottles. At the very end of the line was a young little boy named Zed. He explained that his father had passed away recently. The pitchman told him that if he had been in town sooner, his father would have been saved by his snake oil. The boy tried very hard not to cry. Holding back the tears, he said that his mother at home was also very sick, She had given him all the money she had and sent him to go to the doctor to get her medicine. Drump told him that he should buy a bottle of his miracle elixir. The grifter eagerly snatched the money from Zed's hand and handed him a bottle. Zed smiled and thanked him and ran all the way home to his sick mother. Later that day, Zed was seen in town. He was sitting on a stump, sobbing in sorrow, with his head bowed low. He was holding a small candle. A woman, who was rumored to be a witch, walked by. She was carrying a pumpkin pie and a jack-o'-lantern. She asked him what was wrong, and he told her that his sick mother had died shortly after taking the worthless miracle elixir that he had bought. He had been talked into buying it instead of medicine from the doctor. As she died, with her last breath, she blew out the candle. He blamed himself for her death, and now he was an orphan. She said that she was sorry for his loss. She said that she made a delicious pumpkin pie with a flaky, buttery crisp crust, and the flavor of it was unmatched. She would trade it for the candle. He wiped away his tears that streamed down the cheeks of his face. He traded and left. She put the candle inside of the jack-o'-lantern. The witch then walked to Dalton Drump's wagon. She saw him standing there. There were still people buying his fraudulent product. As the sun set, the last customer made a purchase. She did not buy a bottle. She gave him the jack-o'-lantern as a Halloween decoration for his wagon. He smiled and thanked her. It began to rain. He invited her inside of his wagon to visit. She declined and left. The snake oil salesman went inside of his wagon. Later that night, as the townspeople slept, they were wakened by the sound of a hideous scream of terror. It was raining too hard and too dark out to investigate. Many dismissed the shrieking sound as part of a nightmare. In the morning, the townspeople were surprised to see the wagon was still there. They thought that the peddler would have been on his way to another town to sell his product. Some townspeople were starting to become dissatisfied with their purchase. Some had been feeling poorly, and the so-called miracle elixir did not produce beneficial results. In fact, some felt worse after taking it. Some wanted their money back and waited around for Dalton Drump to come out of the wagon. They were even more surprised that the wagon stayed there all day, with the pitchman not being seen outside. That night, the people had the sheriff look into the matter. He stood on the street and called out to Dalton Drump. There was no reply. The sheriff climbed the steps of the wagon, and some of the braver townspeople stood behind him. He knocked on the door of the wagon. The sheriff opened the door and went inside. It was dark inside, but by the light of the candle in the jack-o'-lantern, he saw the body of Dalton Drumpf lying on the floor. Upon closer examination, he determined that he was dead. The townspeople concluded that it was his screams that woke them during the night. The sheriff picked up the jack-o'-lantern and brought it outside to examine it more closely. Something about it seemed suspicious to him. Perhaps it was a clue. The townspeople, including little Zed, noticed that it resembled the face of Dalton Drumpf. Suddenly it became animated and began to shriek and moan, lamenting its sad fate, apparently haunted by the ghost of the snake oil salesman. The sheriff was so startled that he dropped it. It rolled and landed at the feet of little Zed. The jack-o'-lantern began to moan loudly again. Zed paused. He thought about his mother. Zed lifted his foot and stomped firmly down upon it. The moaning stopped abruptly, and a smoke-like vapor left the squished remains of the pumpkin. The townspeople had been so horrified from that event that some moved right away. Others felt uneasy living in a town they thought might be haunted. They thought the spirit of Dalton Drumpf might be lingering in the air. Whether that was the situation or not, they were haunted by the memory of him. They wanted to get away. Before too long, the town was abandoned and became a ghost town. After hearing the story and leaving the ghost town behind, I'm now more cautious when I hear about products sold by salesmen who make claims that seem to be too good to be true. There are still grifters like Dalton Drumpf who con others out of their money. Modern-day snake oil salesmen still exist. So, the next time during the Halloween season, you take a pumpkin and carve it for a decoration, consider this. If you think you hear the wind moaning, it may be that your jack-o'-lantern is haunted.